Thanks for your help.
Don't mention it.
Elevator 6.
You'll be fine. I just didn't want you to panic.
What's happening?
Nothing.
What was that? I thought I heard it.
You're bleeding.
Yeah. Stand up.
Let me help.
Oh, I think I got cut. It feels like something bit me.
Why you got blood on you, man?
She fell into me.
So you cut her?
What?
Kick your ass.
Jeez, bro, take it easy, okay?
Bro, I'm not your bro.
A man cleaned the inside of a tall building when a body suddenly fell from above and crashed onto a truck parked outside. Police officers surrounded the scene as Detective Bowden arrived, crossing the police line. He examined the crushed truck and looked up at the surrounding buildings. His partner noted the odd angle of the fall. Bowden saw no broken glass on the ground and believed the body had rolled from somewhere nearby. They turned a corner and spotted a high-rise building that fit the trajectory. Inside the building, people went about their morning. A man wearing a hoodie stood near the entrance, watching. Vince McCormick, a man in a suit with a red tie, walked past him and entered. At the reception desk, a security guard named Ben Larson answered the phone while an elderly woman waited nearby, looking confused. A young woman named Sarah Caraway entered the lobby, was told to sign the visitor log, and joined the short line. Ben took a package to deliver to the 39th floor and moved toward the elevators. Vince and the elderly woman stepped into one elevator, but it was crowded, so they moved to another that had just arrived, and Ben joined them, followed by Sarah. As the doors began to close, a voice shouted for them to hold it. Tony Janikowski, the man in the hoodie, rushed in and squeezed inside. The doors closed, and the elevator started moving upward, but soon after, it stopped abruptly between floors. In the security control room, an older guard named Ramirez watched a hockey game, while a younger colleague entered and mentioned that one of the elevators had switched to inspection mode. Ramirez called the building engineer to check it. The engineer, working on a window high above the city, agreed to look into the problem. Inside the stuck elevator, tension began to rise. Ben grew anxious, and the elderly woman questioned him about emergency procedures. Vince pressed the intercom button. Ramirez's voice came through, reassuring them that help was on the way. However, the microphone malfunctioned, and Ramirez could see them but could not hear their replies. Ben tried using his cell phone, but there was no signal. Sarah handed him her phone, and he managed a brief call before the line cut off. Music started playing softly, and Vince began to sing, irritating the others. The engineer reached the top of the elevator shaft and inspected the machinery. He saw nothing wrong and decided to reset the system. Ramirez told those inside that the lights would go out for about 20 seconds during the reset. The lights flickered and went dark. When they came back on, the elderly woman screamed at Ben, who apologized, saying he was claustrophobic. Tony climbed up to open a ceiling panel to get some air, and Ben asked if they should try climbing out, but Tony warned that it was dangerous. The engineer reported that the reset had failed and decided to check the problem from a basement. Meanwhile, Bowden and his partner arrived near the building. Bowden noticed shattered glass on the pavement and stopped a maintenance worker from sweeping it away. A heavy pane of glass suddenly fell from above, nearly hitting them, confirming Bowden's suspicion that something had fallen from the building. The engineer called Ramirez again and began pulling a lever to test the elevator, but it still wouldn't move. The lights in the elevator flickered once more. Ramirez asked if the engineer was causing it, but he wasn't. Moments later, the engineer heard a strange noise from below and followed it into the dark maintenance area. Suddenly, one of the elevators dropped a few feet, narrowly missing it. Inside the elevator, the lights blinked repeatedly, then they went out completely. Strange noises echoed. When a light returned, Sarah was lying on the floor with a wound on her back. The guards in the security room saw blood through the camera feed and called the police. Vince noticed blood on his own hands and tried to hide it. Sarah said something had bitten her, and Tony checked if anyone had sharp objects. Ben noticed blood on Vince's sleeve and accused him. The situation escalated, and Ramirez declared it an assault. Detective Bowden received the call and headed to the building. Ramirez Ramirez and a younger guard explained what had happened. Bowden ordered the elevator company to send a technician and told the fire department to come. He asked the people inside to hold up their IDs to the camera. The text was unreadable, so Bowden and the security team checked the visitor log. Meanwhile, inside the elevator, Sarah suddenly saw everyone around her appear dead, their bodies covered in blood. Then the vision vanished. The lights went out again. The mirror on the back wall shattered. When the lights came back, Vince lay dead, a shard of glass lodged in his neck. Ramirez called Bowden and showed him the footage. The younger guard said he saw a demonic face in one frame and insisted that the devil might be present. Bowden dismissed the claim and continued investigating. He learned that Ben, the temporary guard, had a violent record. In the elevator, suspicion spread among the remaining people. Bowden labeled the scene a crime investigation and asked the survivors to stay calm. He asked one person to take a note from Vince's pocket and hold it to the camera. The note revealed that Vince was going to meet someone in the building for a fraudulent deal. Bowden interviewed the intended victim, who confirmed that Vince was a scam artist. Back at the elevator, the others began frisking one another for weapons. Ramirez found footage of Sarah flinching earlier, but saw no one touch her. Bowden started suspecting her. Tension built again when the elderly woman threatened to spray Ben with pepper spray. He took it from her hands and argued back. The engineer climbed down the shaft, lost his footing, and screamed as his harness tore. A heavy thud hit the top of the elevator. Blood dripped through the ceiling panel. The group realized the engineer had fallen to his death. The fire department began breaking through the wall to reach them. Bowden saw footage of the elderly woman stealing wallets and muttered that everyone inside was guilty of something. Then the lights flickered again, and for a moment the screen showed all of them dead before the feed returned to normal. Inside the elevator, the light went out, and when it came back, the elderly woman was hanging from a cable, lifeless. Bowden ordered a lockdown of the building. The old guard went to the basement to shut off power lines, while Bowden and the younger guard continued watching. Inside, Tony and Ben tried to lower the old woman's body. The detectives found a satchel near the lobby containing tools possibly used to sabotage the elevator. The younger guard, left alone, began reciting prayers over the intercom. The tension inside rose. Ben accused Tony again, and Sarah shouted at Ben to kill him. They fought violently until Bowden's voice broke through, ordering them to stop and face the walls. Both men complied reluctantly. Bowden asked the young guard how the story ended. Ramirez said that if the devil was truly there, everyone would die. Bowden's partner returned with more background on Sarah, learning she was married to the owner of the building's security firm and was meeting her lawyer about a divorce. They found the lawyer, who said her husband controlled the building's systems. Bowden began suspecting the entire situation might be orchestrated. In the basement, the old guard discovered an exposed wire submerged in water and tried to move it. A moment later, a loud spark flashed and the lights in the lobby flickered. People screamed as he fell electrocuted. Bowden ran downstairs but found him dead. Inside the elevator, only 3 people remained. They argued again. The lights went out. When they came back, Ben was dead with his neck twisted violently. Only Tony and Sarah were left alive, breathing heavily in the dark elevator. Sarah held a piece of broken glass in her hand, and Tony pressed himself against the wall, trying to keep distance. From the control room, Detective Bowden told them to stay calm and keep their hands visible. Ramirez muttered that it was almost over, that the devil was nearly done. Bowden tried to ignore him and focused on the monitors. The fire department continued cutting through the wall of the elevator shaft. Bowden instructed Tony and Sarah to sit and wait. They did for a few seconds, but fear returned quickly. Sarah accused Tony of being behind everything. She shouted that he had never signed into the building. Tony denied it, saying he was there for a job interview. Sarah didn't believe him and lifted a shard of glass. Bowden yelled through the intercom for them to stop. Tony dropped his piece of glass, raising his hands, but Sarah kept hers close. The tension held until the lights flickered again. In the control room, static rolled across the screens. Bowden told the younger guard to keep the camera feed steady. Ramirez whispered a prayer. Suddenly, the monitors went black. In the darkness of the elevator, Sarah screamed. The glass clattered and a thump echoed. When the lights came back, Sarah was lying on the floor with her throat cut. Tony knelt beside her, pressing his hands against the wound, begging her to stay awake. She didn't move. Bowden slammed the console and shouted for the firemen to break through faster. The screen flickered again. For a brief moment, a shadowy figure appeared behind Tony. It looked like the old woman, standing upright though she had been dead. Bowden leaned closer to the screen. Ramirez whispered that it was her turn to collect the last soul. Tony heard a voice. It was the elderly woman's, calm and cold, echoing from the darkness. "It's your turn now," she said. Tony froze and looked around, his face pale. He backed into the corner. Clutching the radio he found beside Ben's body. He pressed the button and spoke. "Detective Bowden, I need to tell you something." Bowden leaned closer to the speaker. Tony's voice trembled. "Years ago, I killed 2 people," he said. Bowden stared at the screen, realizing what he was hearing. Tony continued. "I was drinking. I was reaching for another beer. I hit another car. A woman and a child." He stopped for a moment, his breathing shaking. "I left a note. I didn't stay. I just ran." Bowden closed his eyes. Ramirez looked at him, realizing what the confession meant. Bowden whispered that Tony was the man who had killed his wife and son. The younger guard turned toward him, unsure what to say. Bowden didn't move. Inside the elevator, the lights flickered again. The old woman stood before Tony, her eyes black and expression still. She smiled faintly and said, "You can't undo it." Tony lowered his head. "I know," he said quietly, "but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Ramirez whispered another prayer, saying that true confession takes away the devil's claim. On the screen, the old woman's face changed, her features distorting for an instant before vanishing completely. The lights in the elevator returned, steady for the first time. The fireman broke through the door and forced it open. Smoke drifted in from the debris. Tony sat alone among the bodies. The devil was gone. The rescue team pulled him out carefully. Paramedics carried the other victims away on stretchers, covered with sheets. Bowden watched silently as Tony was led to the lobby and placed on a chair, wrapped in a blanket. A police officer asked if Bowden wanted someone else to take the suspect in, but Bowden shook his head. He said he would handle it himself. Tony sat quietly, his eyes red, his voice low as he repeated, "I'm sorry." Later, Bowden drove the police car through the streets. Tony sat in the back seat, handcuffed, staring at the floor. The car was silent except for the faint hum of the engine. After a long pause, Bowden spoke. "It was my family," he said. "The ones you killed." Tony froze, tears forming in his eyes. He whispered that he knew, that he remembered their faces, and that he had hated himself for it every day since. Bowden looked at him through the rearview mirror and said, "I forgive you." Tony broke down, unable to answer. The car kept moving. Ramirez's voice was heard again, the same word from the beginning echoing in narration. He said that his mother once told him that when the devil's story ends, it always leaves a mark, but also a sign of something greater. The car continued down the long, empty road as the sky faded into light.